Who's warm today? I'm feeling warm. You know, I said last week how the new house was really hot over moving day. It's still really hot. So I guess that's just the way it's going to be. Now, what things do you put your confidence in, would you say, this morning? What has your confidence? Does your front door have your confidence? Do you lock it at night? Most of us do. So there's some confidence placed in there. What about we've heard testimonies this morning. Vehicles. Do we place confidence in our vehicles? Sometimes, maybe not. Sometimes you have an expectation. You get up in the morning and you expect it to work, don't you? And then sometimes it doesn't. And we wanted to look at this morning a couple of different stories about how, even though it's difficult, because we know this, even though it's difficult, placing our confidence in God is what we're called to do. And we've heard a testimony about that this morning, but I wanted to look at two different stories. The first one is 1 Kings 22. That will be 1 to 28. And the second one will be Daniel 3, 16, 25. And even though these situations, they're different, they're very different in what's happening, but there's a similar theme, and that is that standing for truth, even in the face of opposition, is not easy, but yet is something that we see is so needed. Does that make sense? Now, when we've been through something, maybe we've had a period of in our life where we've just felt like there's been some level of opposition. Have you ever had that, experienced that in some way? You've been trying to do something, or maybe you've come into a new job, or maybe it's your faith, or maybe a friendship group or a relationship or something like that, but there's just been this resistance against it. It's not an easy place to be in, is it? That can feel quite difficult. Now, let's have a look. Let's look at one of these stories then. Okay, first, let's look at the 1 Kings 22 story. So we've got King Ahab, and he's ruling over a part of Israel, and there's another king in the other part, and these two kings, they're thinking, we're going to go to war. Because there's a big context here going on, in historical context, so they're weighing up, should we go to war? That's a big thing to be weighing up. So the other king says, well, I tell you what, look, we need to get God's input on this. What does God say about this? Now, it's a bigger story, so again, I would always say, go through, read through it, but essentially, he's got some yes men around him, okay? King Ahab has some yes men around him. The story tells that he has 400 prophets around him that all tell him, this is a great idea. This is a great idea, King. You know, you can do this. Let's do this. And we see within the actual story that there's this picture of God holding counsel almost. And this is what's a really interesting picture. And he's almost sort of speaking to his council, and he's saying, look, who is going to deceive Ahab? King Ahab. And it says that this lying spirit says that it will do it. Isn't that a weird sort of image to have? And then it says that this deception then came upon him. And some scholars say, as it's tied to this same sort of situation, that part of that may be through these 400 prophets. Part of it could just be through his own conviction. But essentially, we've got a situation here where there's a really important decision that needs to be made. And King Ahab, he's got 400 prophets around him who tell him what he wants to hear. Now, can anyone see a problem with that? But it's nice to be told what you want to hear, isn't it? Surely. Don't you want that? Don't you want 400 people around you that just say, that's amazing, that's the best thing ever? People are like, that's the great idea, amazing. So that's what he's got. The other king says, is there anyone else? Have we got someone that's really, you must have someone that's like really in sync with what God's saying, essentially. Is there anyone else? And King Ahab, he's like, well, there is this other prophet. But we don't, he's got an issue. He never prophesies good things for me. So I don't think we need to hear from him. Have we ever experienced that? It's like, we don't, he's not good, okay? He misses the mark. The things he says is not good. But it presses on a little bit more and say, no, come on. come on, let's really get the full breadth and spectrum of what the people of God are saying. Even though these 400 are saying, let's go for it, let's just see what he's got to say. So reluctantly, they get this prophet, Micaiah. And he is very reluctant to do it. So his first response is, because he knows what the king wants to hear. So what's his first response? He doesn't want to tell the truth. He's like, oh, Ahab, yes, no. Ahab, it'll be great. You'll have a great victory. It'll be fantastic, like no victory anyone's ever seen. And they know. They're like, no, come on. Hit me with it straight. Tell me. Come on. Lay it on me. Tell me. So then he does. He says, actually, no. You want to know? It's going to be a bad idea. You're going to get scattered. You're going to end in defeat, and it will be demise for you personally. So what does Ahab say? What does he say? It's like, I told you. I told you. Isn't that? Why did we ask him? Why did we ask Prophet Micaiah? I told you this is what it'd say. We don't need to listen to what he's got to say. So that's just like a paraphrase thing of what's going on. Again, read the scripture for yourself and the interaction. But I just want to stop a minute and think of how difficult a situation that would be. In Micaiah's shoes, you've got 400 seemingly qualified people that are all holding important positions against you. How do you hold up in that situation? You know what God's told you. God has told you something. He's given you a message, a vision, and you know it is counter to what these 400 other people are saying. I was trying to put myself in this context, thinking, what would that look like to me? Not that this is the situation we're in, but I thought, okay, so we're part of a denomination. There's probably more than 400 churches involved, but I thought, what would that look like for me? So that would look like if little old me thought they had a message from God, and that actually there were 400 other church leaders, I guess, prophets, whatever you want to call them, that were in the wrong and doing something incorrect. And I thought, well, I think I know how that would go down. Like, I've got an email. Can I just send an email about this? Can you imagine how that would go down? That would be a really hard position to be in, wouldn't it? Especially if the people at the top actually, in this context, very different. They've got a lot of power, personally, over individuals, a lot of power that won't just discredit someone, but maybe on a whim could just have you completely dispatched. We thankfully have never experienced that level of authority, and hopefully we never will. Hopefully we will maintain those freedoms, but that is a tough position. I just want you to put yourself in that position. God says something to you, and there are a multitude of voices against it. How do we hold up? How do we hold up in that situation? Now, the other story, we'll come back to that one. They're a little bit interwoven. I think that the points can be very well connected. Now, another Old Testament story, well known, famous, is the book of Daniel. And even though he's sort of the main character, it's named after him. We have three other characters, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. They're also pretty well known. And essentially what had happened is, at a different time, their nation had been conquered. And what would happen in that context, usually, is they would take people into servitude of the winning nation. So that's what they would kind of do. They would absorb certain people into their nation, and they would try and they would syncretize the culture. They would try and bring them in, put them under a new culture, a new belief system, and that's just kind of what happened. So Daniel and these other people who perhaps were, scholars would say, maybe important, kind of nobility, when they were conquered, they were brought into this servitude, and some time takes place, and we've got King Nebuchadnezzar, and he has got a bit of a, I guess, shall we say, a bit of an ego. Okay, he is thinking, people need to worship me. I mean, I don't know how you come under that perspective. I don't know how he got to that point, but that is what he was thinking. So there's a lot more to it, but essentially he builds this huge golden statue of himself. And he creates this decree, this order. He says, whenever this music plays in the kingdom, everyone needs to bow down to this statue, essentially to me, and worship. Again, something that perhaps we can't really identify with, because we've not really experienced anything like that. And as the story goes on, these three, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will not conform. There is a conviction within them. And if you think of the imagery, imagine this music plays, this horn, this sound goes off, and everyone else around you just drops to the floor in worship. And because you have that conviction of, no, I know my commandments, that I will have no other gods, that this is my God, my Lord, my Savior, my life I give to you, I serve you, there are no others that come close. In that time of that worship, when everyone drops, they stand tall. So what happens then? When you're standing tall above the line, so to speak, you put a target on your back, don't you? You know, if everyone's doing one thing and you're doing another, guess who the problem is? It's us. It's you. It's me. It's you. They put a target on their back. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he was not happy about this. So what does he do? He wants to put them in the furnace. And he wants this furnace to be the hottest it's ever been. And this is where we get that famous story from, that they are put into the fire. And we'll go through some more of this a little bit later, but they're put into the fire. And they are unharmed. And that when the people are observing the flames, this is what I love about this story. When they're observing the flames, they say there are 4 people in there. And say, well, there shouldn't be 4, there should only be 3. I see 4 figures standing in those flames. And scholars, though there's some interesting discourse around it, a lot of scholars will say they believe that was Jesus in some form. Before he'd come to earth, that was the representative of God, that was Jesus, or a Spirit of the Lord, just standing right there in those flames with them. What does that mean for us? So we've got these 2 stories, okay? Now, the first point really is this, that the truth may leave you outnumbered. The truth may leave you outnumbered. Who takes comfort in the majority? Statistically, most of us do, okay? Psychologically, most of us do. Most of us like to think, I've just got this unique, this iron will, this sense of I will stand above the crowd no matter what, because I am resolute and firm. And the psychologists actually say, no, most people, we conform. If you put us in an environment, we will tend to conform. I remember watching this it was like I guess it was like a prank, but they were meant to be studying, and it was in a different country, and it was in a doctor's waiting room, and they had a bunch of people in there that were actors. They were in on it, and then they had some poor random people coming in who I don't know how they got permission to do it. I don't really know what the setup was, but they didn't know what's happening, so they come in waiting in this waiting room for either the doctors or something, and every time there was a beep would just come over the intercom, beep. All the actors, they'd just stand up. They'd stand up for a moment. Then the beep stops, and they sit back down. What do you think the person who was in there, the first time that they saw it, guess what they were doing? They were looking around like, what's happening? Beeps again. Beep. Everyone stands up. Guess what the person did now? They stand up. They stand up, never uttered a word to anyone because everyone was dead silent. Beep goes off, they all sit down. Beep goes off a third time. They all stand up. This time, they're in sync. They're in sync. They're standing up at the same time as everybody else. Beep goes off, they all sit down. They tried this with different people. You know, when the clip skips through different people going through the same situation, pretty much all of them would stand up with that beep. They did not know why they were doing it. They did not know the reason. All they saw is, everyone else is doing it. I need to stand up. What would we do in that situation? Come on, let's be honest. What do we think? While that can be entertaining for us, isn't that scary from a psychological point of view? You know, because we often talk about trying to create a healthy environment, and something, even coming to church and being involved with things and having people around you is important, not just for the spiritual benefit, but because we know the way we are wired as people is that we will usually conform to whatever environment we're in. So the thing for me is, I think, okay, well, if I know that's going to have an effect on my brain, I want to make sure that the biggest influence on my life are the environments I'm choosing, and they're the environments that will be good for me, that will leave an impression on me that I actually want to have on me. Does that make sense? We can't always control that. We could be in some environments we don't want to be. There could be some workplaces or situations that we struggle with. But controlling the environment is helpful, because people, we can conform. So the truth may leave us outnumbered. Now, back to that first story. There's 400 yes men, 400 prophets, one with a different view. What gets me in this story is that Ahab, even though this deceptive spirit had come upon him, he still had access to the truth, didn't he? There was still access to the truth in some way, but he had to take hold of it. He had to grab it and run with it. Now, the Bible tells us in the New Testament, it says that in the last days, whatever we want to classify that as, that people will not have, that they'll have itching ears, that they'll want to just be told things they want to hear. Does that make sense? So you basically, if you wanted to find a certain viewpoint or a certain way of thinking, you'll pretty much be able to find it, won't you? Out there in the world, if you think, actually, I want to take this view and run with it, you can just go online and you will probably find someone that can promote that viewpoint, because we have access to the whole globe. But we really need to use discernment with everything we do, don't we? You know, this is not a simple or easy or quick thing, because we need that discernment. 1 against 100 is a hard place to be. When Moses was in the wilderness and he sent out, how many spies did he send out? Just 12, was it? He just sent out a handful of spies. And the majority of them came back. They'd been scouting the land, saying, okay, can we do this? Again, a similar situation, like, can we go into this promised land? Can we do it? God's given us this promise, but we're not living in the reality of that promise. We need to take some action to get into the reality of that promise. So can we do it? Let's assess the situation. Let's use wisdom. But they did not have enough confidence in what God had said. That was the difficulty, because the spies came back and only 2 said, we can do it. We can go into this land. We can do it. We can take it. And then the majority said, no, that it can't be done. How often have we ever let God's promises be removed from our life a little bit because of what other people have said? Can you hear a buzzing? Maybe channel 23 could go down, Samuel, a bit. No? There we go. There we go. Can you still hear me? No. Okay. Okay. Distractions, you see. Distractions. Where were we? I know it's warm, but come on. We need something. We need something. Yes. We've got to have confidence in what he says to us, because it can be so easy to be dissuaded. If God gives you a word or speaks something over you, we can be so easily discouraged by that based on what other people say. We had that. Moses was swayed by the negatives. No, we can't do it. We can't do it. And then what gets me is they had to then live in the wilderness for another 40 years. Because God did not force them. He didn't say, no, we've promised this. Now, we've been through this, guys, okay? So we're going to do this vote again, and we'll keep voting until you vote right. He just said, okay. He says, if that's where you're at with things, I'll just wait. I'll wait. Because I think there will be a generation that will rise up. If I have to wait for all of those naysayers to not be in the picture anymore, I'll just wait. I got time. I'm the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. I can wait. And that is what he did. Isn't that scary? And then another generation had to pass almost until Joshua could take over. And then finally it was time, there was enough movement or momentum to begin that journey of taking the promised land that could have possibly been started 40 years earlier had the answer been different. Do we get that? I think to myself, like, Lord, what self-imposed exile am I living in sometimes? You know, if I just had confidence in this area of my life, or if I had confidence in what you said to me about this, how would I look different? I think, where have I let those voices take things from me and say, actually, we'll just wait. If we're not ready for that, we'll wait. If you've not got that in you right now, if the confidence is that if the faith is not there, I'll step away and we'll wait. I'm always going to be with you and I'll provide. And he looked after them every single day in that wilderness, which is a message in and of itself. He didn't leave them or abandon them. He just said, I will wait with you. I'll wait with you. What things could be missing from our lives? And as a church, I think, you know what could we look like as a church? Is there any self-imposed exile or wilderness in a sense because of the viewpoint or the decision we make? Like, God, if you tell us to do something, how can I just get to that childlike faith to just believe that you've said it? Even though it doesn't make sense to me, I will follow it. Does that make sense? When we stand for God, we might stand alone in the sense of other people, but we'll never stand unknown. It's always this picture in the Bible again and again, leaving the boat. And I love the boat. You know, I like to be comfortable. But when God comes and he just speaks something, what is the posture of my heart? What are you saying to me, God? What are you saying to us as a community? What kind of response do we have? You know, what discouragements, we said last week, what discouragements have we let rob things from us? Because each one of us, we have something amazing, something unique that no one else has. And that specifically, you know, I really do think there is a place, a purpose for every single person in this church as well, and in this community. What does that look like if we come before God and just say, whatever you say, I'm on board with it? Even if there are voices, other voices in our life, our world saying, no, it can't be done, or the multitude of voices against us, but what does that one voice of God say? Problems are not the absence of God. I think this is a big one that we need to know, because it's often, you know, maybe you go to a big conference or something like that, and I get it. People don't want to preach about problems, because people don't go away thinking, I feel so encouraged today. What did they preach on? Problems. You know, they said that problems are not the absence of God, and boy, do I have problems. So boy, do I have some God in my life. But it is true.